Does this chair go down? Oh, there she is. I'm gonna have to cut these videos once a month though. Nothing to talk about anymore.
You're running up.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jay McInnes, Sharp Real Estate Group, episode 275. Today we're just doing a nice little current events seminar, if you will. We got 5 points. Will we have a two-tier property tax system in Vancouver? Despicable but true. Q3 2023 was the fastest Canadian population growth since ye olde 1957. Now, how the population growth has molded the Vancouver rental market. Vancouver now has the highest construction costs in the country, 2024. And of course, number 5, the rates have been held at 5% for 4 terms. We're going to get into that. So, off the bat, a two-tier property tax system. There was an article in the Globe and Mail this past week, interviewed some fine characters that we all know. One Michael Geller, who you may have heard of. And it's going into, it's called UPZONING results are highly uncertain. So all this 4plex, 6plex, 8plex, depending on the size of the lot, all this new density plans they're doing, the transit hub density they're doing, how that's actually going to play out, how heritage houses specifically in those zones are going to play out. Is that trumping heritage or not? And basically just how it's all going to play out once it's inevitably done. There's a lot of resistance right now in the building and construction area because of the cost of money, of course, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Then it jumped into this interesting point of a two-tier tax system. Naturally, one for detached houses, more tax, and one for smaller condos, multifamily, which of course I thought was ridiculous. And yet again, preying on the little old ladies and the little old men in these little old homes. Just leave them alone, okay? But anyway, a quote out of this real estate consultant and commentator, Michael Geller, known for offering ideas and housing policies, some of which has been implemented by government. So this guy's a real estate consultant. He's got all the awards and credentials and all that sort of stuff. The interesting thing about this, and this is subjective, this isn't in stone yet, but it's being proposed by him, and he has been listened to before. So what he says has merit in the eyes of ye olde government. One of his newer ideas is the adoption of a two-tier tax system that puts detached houses in a higher tax bracket than attached houses, such as condos and duplexes. So again, the narrative of the government right now is they are trying to be gone with the single-family zoning, which is done now, exclusivity on that at least, be gone with the rebuilding of single-family homes. You now have to build smaller, yada, yada, yada. And of course now, why not just tax them more? So you see from every angle, the single family detached house, what was once part of the Canadian dream is now trying to be no more, exploded. The idea arose when he realized he was paying the same taxes on his Coal Harbour condo as his West Side house. So he's one of them, one of those darn multi-property owners. And even he's saying, you know, we need to mix up the mill rate ratios here on that property tax. And I think I should be paying a little bit more over here. So interesting perspective. Mr. Geller argues that a lower rate for multifamily homes could incentivize redevelopment of single-family properties into multifamily multiplexes. City of Vancouver Council last year also voted upzone most single-family areas up to 6 units per lot. So a lower rate for multifamily could incentivize the redevelopment of single-family. No one's going to build a house because it's cheaper or as expensive. No one's building a house because of the tax motivations of the property tax amount. So I think that's a little ridiculous. Let's rezone this and go multifamily as opposed to build our forever home because there's cheaper taxes on multifamily. They're two different types of buyers. Now for those spec builders, of course, this is going to intertwine. But again, those are the people that aren't building right now because the cost of money is so expensive, and. So there's caveats everywhere. But anyway, the idea does make sense, especially since the province wants to encourage the redevelopment of single family lots into multi-unit. What better way to reinforce the idea than increase the taxes on a lot when it's used solely for single-family dwelling, albeit with a possible basement suite or coach house, and decrease the tax by having a lower mill rate on the same lot if used for 3 to 6 dwellings. So again, what they're doing is applying that pressure over here, trying to get motivation to get this inventory, this type of inventory built. Whereas even the fact that this has now been allowed to do duplexes was kind of already around 3, 4, 6 units. The reason it's not getting done, and they can keep throwing top level motivation out there in their eyes, is that the money is too expensive and people aren't building them because the cost to do so trumps the risk, is on par with the risk and against the marketability of what you can sell it for today, yada, yada, yada. It just doesn't make sense. So that's the fundamental of why they're not being built. But of course, the city shows motivation. We're doing what we can. We're trying to get it done. And they're throwing every suggestion out there, which again, if his idea gets involved, you as a single family homeowner simply pay more tax. Big surprise. They've come in, they've touched the market again, and it's more expensive. Nothing changes. Number 2, the fastest population growth since 1957. So 430,000 new temporary residents, international students, and foreign workers joined us on this beautiful rainy land in 2023 Q3. The agency says population growth over the first 9 months of 2023 has already surpassed total growth in any other full year, including 2022. And then we trump it again with that Q3 growth, which is the largest quarter growth, adding on to the largest annual growth we've seen. I'm not going to go into why I think this is happening to these levels. That's a political conversation, but we're going to lean into it today, how it's actually directly affecting the people on the ground here. I don't know how many stay, because again, temporary residents, international students, temporary foreign workers. I couldn't find numbers on the average ratios of each of those categories, how many of them actually stay and become permanent. That's not so important in this talk though. This leading into the rental problem that we've got is when this type of person comes here, they typically don't purchase. Now, we've all heard of the student buying the $10 million house, bringing mom and dad's money over and doing so, and that's great. We're not talking about that small segment, but obviously the majority of this saturate the rental market. So when we are looking at these numbers, most people are looking immigration, assuming new residents, assuming they have enough money to buy, and are gobbling up all the inventory from those poor domestics that are trying to make their way and save through the Canadian tax system to be able to afford to buy in. And they just float in and purchase. That's not what we're talking about either. The rental market has been on a steady incline, which I'm going to get into the specifics of that in a second, but we're really seeing on the ground level the effect of absorption on that side of things, which of course is going to come back to, well, if the rental rates are at all-time highs and they're increasing 1% to 2% a month, Jesus, it's like a goddamn horsehair stuck in my face, then I'm going to go buy an investment unit. So that, of course, the secondary effect of that is motivation to get into investment properties, so on and so forth. So it may stimulate. Now, the market's obviously down. We're starting to show signs, which we'll talk about in a second. But again, the cost of money, similar to the building, is why most people haven't been out on a tear purchasing real estate in the last year, because again, the cost of money is high. That leads us to the next article on rentals. Vancouver leads the way as Canadians' rental market hits new high for the 6th month in a row. On a monthly basis, average asking rents increased 1.4% in October, a slight decrease from the monthly gains of 1.5% in September and 1.8% in August, which was attributed to seasonal factors. Of course, school starting, yada, yada, yada. But as you can see, between 1% and 2% growth a year just in the rental market. So that is being pushed heavily, and we see they're going to call it immigration inflation. We know that inflation is battened and hammered down into a lump number so they can more easily convey this is the inflation number, it was this, or this is our target, but everyone experiences inflation differently. As you may know by now, and if you're a tenant looking to jump into a market in, for example, October, you had 1.4% inflation over if you were looking in September. And if you were looking in September, you had 1.5% inflation on that cost over August, and August was 1.8, and it obviously compounds forward. So someone who is looking for a rental is obviously affected by that. Someone that owns a house and is just paying their mortgage down is not affected by that. So we can see how everyone is affected differently, and some will be dramatically more affected. Specifically, these people kind of at the entry level of the real estate rung, just looking to get in with rentals, including all of these foreign bodies. So Vancouver's led the way against Canada's most expensive city for renters, with an average 1-bedroom unit listed at $2,872 a month and a 2-bed listed at $3,777. Major factor driving up rent prices is the trend of fewer people looking to become homeowners. Too expensive, money's too expensive. Given the ongoing climate of higher interest rates, 1/3 of Canadian households are renters, and the rate of which is growing twice as fast as it is for home owners. So people are basically being cornered into the market, as you can anticipate, to rent. And while they're trying to save for that house, and while they're trying to save, obviously now they're combating these inflated rental prices. So it's all a snowball of compounding effects against the people, if you will. People are not moving out and going into home ownership markets because they can't with these rates, was the final comment on that. So again, the rates are keeping people from buying, the rates are keeping builders from building, and obviously the rates play an effect of these rentals as well, plus immigration, plus. So it's getting a little crazy out there. Number 4, the highest building costs in Canada. This is a Business of Vancouver article titled "Vancouver Building Expect to Face Canada's Highest Construction Costs in 2024. A low-rise condominium apartment project up to 12 stories will cost in the range of $325 to $400 a square foot in Vancouver. This compares to last year of $310 to $380. So we're looking at kind of $10 to $20 per square foot layered onto the cost of building. That's residential. I've also got some other stats here which I don't follow but are interesting. Fitting out Class B office space for new tenant, and Class B office space is desperately in need of new tenants right now. Work from home thing, blah, 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 the whole COVID thing carrying forward. Ranges from 85 to 155 in Vancouver, which is up marginally. It's about the same as last year. And then Altus Group gets into distribution facilities in Vancouver will cost $180 to $465 a foot per building, compared to $115 to $195 a foot for warehouses, which is virtually unchanged. So office and distribution, we'll call that light industrial, is pretty much flat, whereas of course residential is growing, because with the influx of we'll keep leaning on this immigration arm of this conversation, is there's just many more people coming looking for residential than any of these other aspects here, at least in Vancouver. So it all plays a part. High immigration, numbers game. High money, numbers game. Which leads us to point 5, which is the bank held, as you will all know by now, of course, because it happened a week ago, the bank held their rate for the 4th consecutive meeting at 5%. The anticipation around this rate dropping at some point this year, again, I'm going to call Q3 at some stage. I believe that we'll start seeing a reduction in the interest rates, incrementally, of course, but I think that's when it's going to begin. So with that general assumption, most people have that this year is that we're going to see that. We're seeing a bit of frenzy start kicking up. Open houses a lot busier, generally speaking. More listings, I think, will follow. That's still a big issue. There's not a lot of quality listings on the market. So that has started to pick up with anticipation, which is good. And hopefully that, of course, continues. So that's basically it. We have still the same basic issues out there of more people coming, nothing being built, more taxation, and the money is still as expensive as it's ever been. So we are fighting through. That's what we're dealing with this month, and we will come up with the beloved market update next week to see what the actual numbers brought us in January. And until then, you enjoy this beautiful weather.